Hello.
Right, we get a lot of questions about Robo Advice, and we've often mentioned Robo Advisors ourselves, but what are they, and are they all they're cracked up to be? Because basically investment is scary and advice is expensive, and the whole idea behind Robo Advisors is that they attempt to steer a middle path with a low cost stripped down service. Generally, your requirements are established by a quick online survey, and then a portfolio of investments is recommended. And if you want to be hands-off, which is really the main advantage of a robo-advisor, this is certainly the way to go. It all sounds pretty wonderful, but is it really as good as it's cracked up to be? So to find out, Vicky road tested one of the new kids on the block, Open Money. Now, Open Money is a web-based and app-based advisory service function, if you like, but it has the added advantage of allowing you to have a web chat or an actual telephone conversation with a qualified financial advisor. So that's a useful feature, and we know there's strong demand for that because applications for telephone appointments have more than tripled since lockdown. So first up, what did it involve?
First of all, though, I should tell you people out there that even though I am married to this lovely man who is passionate about all things involving personal finance.
Embarrassing me now.
I myself, I think I've probably got more in common with the rest of the population in that the whole idea of investing, I think, is actually really quite scary. And if someone tells me I've got to do something about my investments, my heart sinks and I'm filled with dread. So that's the background. I went online, I went on Open Money, and I started answering the questions. And actually, it was quite simple. They ask you basic things like what your income is, what your outgoings are, and if people find that a bit daunting, there's even a sort of budget calculating app involved as well, so that could help you calculate what your outgoings were. They asked obviously what your savings are, and that's quite important because rather responsibly they were trying to calculate whether I had actually 3 months worth of income or saved up as a sort of emergency fund, buffer fund sort of thing before I actually wanted to start investing. Then obviously they asked how much did I want to invest, although I think this is actually quite a flexible thing, and also what my goals were. And it was quite nice because they actually had suggestions. You might be saving for a wedding or for a new house or for your retirement. That was me. And things like that. So it was more like tailor-made, even though it was just a questionnaire. And they also asked me about my financial knowledge. I borrow his brain for that, so I put quite low on that respect, and also my risk appetite, and that was quite cleverly done because nobody really knows what they're going to feel about if they lose, if the value of their investments goes down. So they actually gave a few examples of if you lost this amount at this percentage, how would that make you feel? So that actually made it a bit easier to relate to, really. That was it for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, sort of surfing over your shoulder whilst you were doing it. It didn't look too intimidating, did it? And there were plenty of buttons you could click to have clarification if the questions weren't clear. And to be honest, they were fairly clear. And if you really got stuck, this is one of the unique features I kind of liked about the service, was that the web chat and the telephone help facility, that can either help you with financial advice,
and they actually allocated me a personal financial advisor, so I could actually address my queries to the same person every time if I had them. So I thought that was quite good.
No, that was good. And to be fair to them, they haven't chased or sort of made a nuisance of themselves, have they?
No, and we did this over a week ago. So that's,
So basically, we were able to try the service and see what it looked like and felt like, and actually get the results as well, without sort of divulging too much information about ourselves and without going to an enormous amount of trouble. I think this was the thing that often puts people off. But the other unique features we liked, obviously the web chat and the telephone financial advice we liked, but those services are also available if you're just struggling with the functionality of the website. Not that you should do, but there are, it's there as an additional comfort. The other thing we liked, and Vicky mentioned that, was that it did check that you'd got enough of an emergency fund before you started to invest. So one of the people who provided feedback about the service on Trustpilot, for example, was a bit upset because they wouldn't let him start investing straight away. But the initial survey had established that he hadn't got 3 months expenditure in cash squirreled away in a savings account.
Yeah. So it's a very responsible approach, I think, rather than the maybe subconscious feeling you might have, oh, these people are out to sell me something.
No,
They're
that's
saying,
right.
no, we're not going to sell you something unless you've got a sensible buffer zone in your life.
And in fact, in that regard, that was it. That was the other interesting thing, because they asked whether your employer would match any increased payments you put into your workplace pension if you had one.
Which is a thing, isn't it? Yeah.
And so they're not, they weren't just looking to grab all your money and put it to invest with them. If you had a better option outside, they would tell you that. So that was reassuring that was part of the questionnaire. And then, based on your responses, like Vicky said, if you're saving for a wedding or a holiday, they're not going to direct you towards a pension. But obviously, if you're saving for retirement, a pension makes a lot of sense. So, it would work in that way.
So, what I'm interested in, obviously, they did suggest some investments for me. They didn't really mean very much to me. What did you think of the investments that they offered?
Right, okay. Well, I was quite curious about how they'd show that, but they did give you a detailed breakdown of each of the funds that they'd invest you in, and there were about 12 funds, I think, one of which was a small allocation to cash. But I was pleasantly surprised to find that a lot of the funds weren't just sort of random sort of funds nobody had ever heard of. They were actually household names like Vanguard, Fidelity and iShares. So it's, if branding is of any value to you in the investment community, you were certainly you're certainly involved with blue chip names, if you like.
Yeah, that's reassuring for me anyway. But the big reason why people do this is because it's very, very good value. It's meant to actually cost 0.47%. Now, to put that in context, how much do other things cost in terms of financial advice?
Right, okay, well 0.47% is for every £100 invested you're paying 47p, which is very much at the low end, if not the lowest cost you're going to get, bearing in mind that covers buying the funds, the fund charge, the platform charge, and any transaction charges, because those are what often sort of mount up. And the telephone advice is free. That's part of the deal. So the 47p is an all-in price. The government a few years ago introduced a stakeholder pension, which was supposed to be a stripped-down pension with the idea that it would give you a cap on charges, but that cap was actually 1.5%. So that's £1.50 per £100 invested. So it's more than 3 times more. And if you were to sort of go down the conventional advised route, you would probably be paying 1%, perhaps even 1.5% each year, plus any platform charges, fund charges, transaction charges, and you wouldn't necessarily be directed into the low cost funds either. So yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised about the cost structure.
Seems very good value.
Yeah. I mean, of course, the other side of value is performance, and that's more difficult to judge, but that's where having the comfort of household names does help.
So, obviously, when we decided to road test Open Money, you did a bit of research around the other robo platforms, and there are many, aren't there?
Oh, yeah, no,
so
that's
this is just one. And also you looked at all of the user feedback on this one. What did other people think?
Right, okay. Well, just to quickly mention some of the other products out there, Wealthify is probably one of the strongest products there. That allows you to slice and dice your investments. It has quite a nice user-friendly front end, and you can make projections and stuff like that. And I wasn't aware that you could do that with Open Money. Open Money is very much for the sort of people who fire and forget. Do you know what I mean? Who would otherwise be too scared to get involved. And so that's to some extent there are different services.
Yeah.
But you have got the comfort of having somebody at the end of a telephone able to give you some financial advice with the Open Money service. There are things like Nutmeg as well, and Money Farm, and all looking to achieve similar sort of things, but the difference is often that they allow you to have different minimum investments. And the thing we liked about Open Money was that it was, to be fair, that applies to several of the other advisors, is that you could stop and start your payments. So it would give you a lot of flexibility. So if you were stretching yourself with your first couple of months thinking, yeah, it would really be nice to invest £100 a month or £200, then you found it was a bit unaffordable, then you could rein it back without a penalty, so that's quite valuable. In terms of the feedback for Open Money in particular, there were some negative ones, but they tended to be from people who struggled with the functionality. And our own experience was that actually we found the functionality quite user friendly, didn't we? So that wasn't a huge problem, and the people who made it all the way through invariably gave very high ratings. So they were very impressed with the service. They liked the simplicity. They kind of liked the hands off. If there was a complaint, it was because sometimes ISA or SIP transfers perhaps didn't go through as quickly as they'd hoped, but then again, that's more of a industry problem than a provider problem necessarily.
Yeah, that takes a long time.
Yeah, so sometimes you have to be patient, sometimes you have to chase, which is unfortunate, but that's not necessarily their fault.
No.
But, that's not saying it's not their fault, but it takes two to tango.
Yeah.
So if we were starting from scratch, do you think you would go for it?
I definitely would. It's so simple and easy, and I haven't got hundreds of thousands of pounds to invest, so I can't afford a financial advisor who unfortunately will quite often insist that you've got a few £100,000 before they will actually give you their services. So I would definitely go around this route instead.
Yes, no, I mean, I suppose that's important to stress. Robo Advisors have arisen because there is an advice gap. The regulatory costs and the costs of doing business mean that often it's not practical to provide advice to people with small pots of money. It's a harsh fact of life. So this fits a gap in the market very nicely. But to be honest, we were both pretty impressed, perhaps more so than we were expecting. If you have a simple situation and you just need to start investing, because often that's the most important thing. If you start investing today, and rather than delaying it for a year or so until you eventually get round to booking an appointment with an advisor, the advice would have to be pretty amazing to catch up catch up their ground.
The pension man mantra. It's not how you invest, it's that you invest.
Yeah. Basically,
I remember something.
So you could watch this video and make a start straight away if you wanted to. So that's a very strong feature of them. Especially if you have a simple situation and you just want to get started with a minimum of fuss. This is pretty much right up there. And if you want to get more sophisticated about it, well, there is a graduation of services that allow you to get more involved in the day-to-day running of your portfolio. But it must be stressed that this one doesn't allow you to do that. Basically, you put your circumstances in, it recommends a portfolio, and that's pretty much it. You can have a discussion about your risk appetite, and generally you find that when people discuss their risk appetites with their financial advisors, actually it goes up a bit because they get a bit more comfortable with the nature of the risk they're taking. If you're taking a long-term risk, actually it's not the worst thing in the world to have quite a few equities in that.
So basically, in summary, I think there are about 5 main reasons why I think certainly Open Money and probably most robo platforms were good. The first thing is it's just so simple. You can do it straight away. It's very, very good value. It's flexible, so you're not committed for a long while. You can, have an emergency or change your mind about something if you want. It's extremely accessible for advice included within this cheap rate, and it's not biased towards selling you something, which I think people do have a background feeling maybe that financial advice is going to, be trying to sell you something essentially. And it seemed to be quite responsible, for example, making sure you've got an emergency fund and making sure if there were other reasons, well, perhaps your employer will top up your pension contribution. That could actually be a better way of investing your money. So it seemed very fair. So that's why I'd go for it.
Yeah. So anyway, just in short, the cost is competitive, the investments are made with household names, and the advice, though basic, appears pretty solid. So yeah, what's not to like, I guess. So if you found this useful, that's great. But please consider subscribing, liking, and especially commenting below. A lot of the topics we cover in our videos arise from questions from readers and from listeners. And we very much appreciate that. So until next time, take care out there. Thank you.